let us do the news. And we're going to start with this from Politico. I'm sure they must be rubbing their hands in glee right now, celebrating over this. The headline, he's lied about everything. Iran war puts Trump on shaky ground with young MAGA men. Their frustrations and anger with the conflict were on full display at CPAC this week. Which that reminds me, I think I bookmarked it. Kaoru Kanojo pointed this one out. Elijah Schaefer, reputation for being a bit of a lol cow, but apparently he was in attendance at CPAC this year. And he says, CPAC 2026 really giving me hope for the American youth. Every young man and woman here all radicalized, based, J-pilled, way further right than MAGA, actively infiltrating the establishment. This is one of the best things that we could hope for, especially the infiltrating the establishment part. Way further right than MAGA, radicalized and based. That's what we need to see in people in the right wing. It's like I keep saying, you're not radicalized enough. So this is an encouraging sign. Everyone's staff is either gripers, far right, Orthodox Catholic, pro-white, or some combination of the above. That's very good. Say what you will about the gripers. At least they, unlike a lot of other people in the right, are actually fucking doing something about things. You know, something is being done rather than people just talking about things and bitching about things all day. Even the ethnic pro-American nationalists support our people and mission. It's beautiful to witness. Things will be a lot different in the next 12 years. Healing is possible. The world is changing. All the Western countries far right are colliding in closed-door meetings. Don't know if he meant to say colliding or colluding or cooperating or working together. Most access have had to powerful global players of any CPAC in a decade. We're all aligned and aware of the hurdles. From Romania to Croatia, even Germany, there's a global coalition and nationalist movement gaining real traction. This is good. This is good. I am hopeful. Everyone's well dressed too. Aesthetics are coming back. Chicks are hot again too. No more fat women. Everyone's classy. I'm liking this direction. You'd have to be here to get it. Apparently, CPAC going on in Texas right now, in a city called Grapevine, which if you know anything about Texas towns, Grapevine is sort of smack dab in the middle of Dallas and Fort Worth, so right there in the heart of things. Don't watch over there, but have it just for the sake of it. Well done. And do we believe them? I mean, yeah, he could be full of shit. But also I have to ask, where's the incentive and what do they gain by lying about something like that? I mean, we have to think about what the end result would be of saying something like that, that charges up the base. And it could be complete and total bullshit. But it still is positive message, gives hope, energizes the base. It's a good thing. I'm going to count it a good thing. I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth, you know? Don't need to fully agree with other people on the right. We need to unite and be more proactive if we want to win the culture war. Yes. Too often there's infighting, and I think the infighting is triggered by a lot of agent saboteurs and a lot of controlled opposition. And those people need to be purged from the movement. More and more people just need to be saying, no, we are making a united stand here, and we're not going to have any of this infighting or punching right. And if you keep doing that, we're throwing you out, we're disavowing you, and we're going to tell the whole world, you're not welcome here anymore. But let's get into this political article. Joseph Bullock feels betrayed by President Donald Trump because of the war in Iran. The 30-year-old Iraq and Afghanistan war veteran voted for Trump in 2024, but at the annual Conservative Political Action Conference gathering this week, he sported a hat emblazoned with America First, a slogan Trump championed during his campaign, along with the promise not to start new wars in foreign countries. He said that, but he also said that if some people tend to forget this sort of thing, but he did say on the campaign trail from the beginning that Iran was in his sights. Iran was a target. I think people's memory can be a bit selective at times. He's lied about everything, said Bullock. If you go into a war where there's no endgame, how's it going to end? There's no clear objective. No clear objective that they've maybe talked about. But again, I don't believe that they went into this without an endgame. This lad's just been a bit hyperbolic. He hasn't lied about everything. He's done exactly what he said he would. You just weren't paying attention. Bullock is part of a cohort of young MAGA loyalists who are increasingly frustrated with Trump over the war in Iran. While Trump's decision to join Israel in attacking Iran has rallied war hawks and his older supporters, has alienated many of the young men who swung toward the GOP in 2024. That split is resonating among not only the rank and file, but also conservative media influencers in some corners of the White House. We got two different camps here, neither of which are... I don't think either of which are really... I don't know how to describe it. Look, objectively, most everything is done now in Iran. We're in the mop-up phase of what's going on over there. The Navy has been completely destroyed. Most, if not all, of their ground forces gone. They've lost all air superiority. Best they've been able to do is take a few pot shots at the neighbors. I mean, that to me, I don't know about anyone else, that to me sounds like winning. Has it been wrapped up in 24 episodes in a single television season, or in a 2-hour made-for-television movie event? No. But that's also not how reality works. These sorts of things take time. The idea of going into Venezuela, grabbing the dictator there, that was kind of a one-off thing. And fairly easy to do. Shockingly easy. Iran's going to take a bit more time. There's a lot of people that I think have been a bit light-switch brained about it because if Israel benefits in any way, shape, or form, it's somehow a bad thing. And it's like sometimes the people you don't like are going to benefit from the things that you do. I think too many people are letting their anti-Israel, anti-Zionist sentiments cloud the judgment in a way. They're being a bit too emotional about all this. And not really looking at the long game of this is yet another move to encircle China, which is one of the bigger targets that needs to fall. And eventually it will. Nobody's looking at the long term. People have peanut brains. Legacy media is pretty much over with, and yet the news cycle is still a thing. Strange how that works. I don't know. I will say this, though. For those who are not quite keen on the whole war in Iran, if the thing drags on for too much longer, and I'm not talking a few more weeks, I'm talking more realistically like a few months, even into a year beyond, then yes, I am probably going to be... I will be right there with the rest of them who are against this whole thing. In that, okay, now it's starting to seem like this is just something to enrich the military-industrial complex. Now it seems like you're not serious about winning anymore. Okay, all right. And that is still a possibility. It is a possibility that the wrong people are going to wrestle control of things and just make this another forever war. The potential for that does exist. I don't deny that. Right now, it's looking like they're in the home stretch, in the cleanup phase of things. And the rest is just going to be a sort of post-war occupation. But the longer it does drag out, the longer it looks like, okay, you really didn't have an end game in mind. And now you're just dragging it out for the sake of dragging it out to enrich the military-industrial complex, which is what we saw with the war in Iraq. To which case, at that point, I would say, yeah, okay, pull out and just let these people in the region kill each other. Just let them have at each other and let God sort it out. I have to remember, people do not think these days. Well, they certainly don't think in the long term. And they are being rather reactionary about a lot of things. Both can be true as well. You need to compromise if you want to achieve your goal. Sometimes, yes. A lot of bad actors and people acting in bad faith, though, especially in the modern era that we live in, use compromise as a weapon against their opposition. Our only concern should be the status of the strait at this point. It does appear that, let me see here. I saw a thing on Citizen Free Press. Yeah. AP News. Iran starts to formalize its chokehold in the Strait of Hormuz with a toll booth regime. Iran appears to be setting itself up as a gatekeeper for the Strait of Hormuz. Move could cement Tehran's de facto chokehold of the crucial waterway and formalize its ability to help keep its own oil flowing with China. What with, though? What naval vessels are they going to have to enforce any of this? What weapons are they going to have to pay for any of this? This is ridiculous. There are certain values you cannot compromise on stances. I'm sure you know that, though. Yes. More concerned about the fact that literally ICE can do TSA's job better than they can. Yes. I think we've got some tabs about that. Traffic through the strait has fallen by 90% since the start of the Iran war, sending global oil prices skyrocketing and inflicting alarming shortages on the Asian nations that get their oil from the Persian Gulf countries via the strait. Iranian communications to the United Nations Maritime Authority and the experience of ships transiting the strait suggest the creation of something akin to a toll booth. Ships must enter Iranian waters and be vetted by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. At least 2 vessels have paid for passage. Okay, they're fools. They're cooks if they do that. No, I don't want to start my day with morning wire. Fuck off. Only about 150 vessels, including tankers and container ships, have transited since March 1st, according to Lloyd's List Intelligence shipping information firm. It's still a lot of vessels. Little more than one day's normal traffic before the war. Iran's Karg Island terminal loaded 1.6 million barrels in March, largely unchanged from pre-war monthly loading totals, according to data analytic firm Kepler. Most of the customers are small private refineries in China that don't care about US sanctions. Well, they never did. A majority of the ships that have made it through in recent weeks headed east out of the Gulf. Iran-affiliated ships accounted for 24% of transits, Greece 18%, China 10%, counted by ownership of flag registration. Yet on closer examination, vessels connected to Iran accounted for 60% of the transits during the first part of the war, and in the last few days some 90%. About half the vessels turn off radio identification systems that show their location before going through and reappear on the other side of the Gulf of Oman. So they go radio silent and try to stealthily go through, and then they turn on the radio ID once they're clear. Lloyd's List says tolls are paid in yuan, China's currency. So 2 vessels out of approximately 150 have paid a toll in Chinese yuan. That kind of sounds like the exception to me and not the rule. It's to the point that I'm looking at this from AP and it's just like, yeah, I don't know if I believe you. I honestly think that Iran is just LARPing at this point. Because I really don't see if that entire... If the Navy and the Air Force and everything has just been decimated by the US and by Israel, it's like, what are you going to enforce any of this with? This just sounds like LARPing. I just don't believe you. Generational divide was on stark display at CPAC, annual conservative base rallying gathering, where some young MAGA loyalists expressed deep frustration, even anger, at the Trump administration's choice to reignite conflict in the Middle East. 1 month into the war, Trump's shaky ground with young men threatens to fracture an already fragile GOP coalition ahead of a hostile midterm in November. At the conference in North Texas, some attendees carried around Iranian flags, pledging loyalty to the U.S. mission overseas, while others donned America First hats and preached about the need for anti-interventionism. Long-term chart. This thing doesn't go very well. You know, just assuming, wargaming this out. The Americans have a scapegoat that they can blame for all of this. There's a powerful lobby that's going to fight them like hell to make sure that they don't. But the Americans do have a trump card of sorts, and that is Israel. the blame can be shifted. To say, hey, we acted on your intelligence. You told us this was good. And now look at the mess you've got us in. So the anti-Zionist, anti-Israel crowd, you've got a rare opportunity to really grab victory from the jaws of defeat and say, those people lied to us. This was based off faulty intelligence. And we're in this mess because of them. And there's plenty of people out there that will believe it too. So there's some moves that could be made with all of this, if certain factions wanted to. I don't know if they'll be clever enough to seize the opportunities when they've been given to them. You know, it could all just devolve into impotent screeching about the Jews. But no, there is actually an opportunity here to make a legitimate criticism and legitimate case, sort of questioning the alliances that we have with certain countries. A point that could be made of, with friends like this, who needs enemies? If it turns into an absolute pig's breakfast. Right now, there's a lot of people that are trying to meme that into existence. Time will tell if that's actually how it goes. Kalergi, thank you for the gift sub to Father Joe. Joe, enjoy your gift subscription on Kick, courtesy of our Kalergi. When the wall is first breached, Annalise Cardinal, we now turn to the Auditrice Mécanique d'Annalise Cardinal, the judgment of the Auditrice Mécanique d'Annalise Cardinal. Thank you for the redeemed, Kalergi. When the wall is first breached, it dies in an avalanche of pulverized rock creek, Grimaldus Hell's Reach. Yes, sometimes all it takes is just one little keystone, one little linchpin being pulled out, and that just starts the rock slide or the avalanche. And oftentimes one never knows what that's really going to be. We'll fight and win or fight and die. All that ever changes is the color of the sky. We fight under the shade of the blood of on our blades. Interesting quote. Let's see, a quote from 21-year-old Andrew Belcher, president of the Ohio College Republicans. Trump and Republicans in general are going to have major issues in the midterms in 2028 if we can't wrap this up in a relatively quick amount of time. He added Trump is doing relatively poorly with hyper-online young men who are influenced heavily by media figures like Tucker Carlson and other isolationists in the GOP. I mean, that is an issue. I think the things that affect them the most are not really being addressed. And a lot of those issues are domestic, such as making sure that these hyper-online young men have gainful employment, have some type of future that they can build for themselves. A lot of it tying back to it's the economy, stupid. I'm so behind on the Iran situation. I'm still catching up right now. I'm mainly listening. Yeah, a lot of us, all we can do is listen because things change so much in the week and really not sure what the hell's going on over there. Rather comforting, like a kind of like a delicious and warm hug. Oh, did you finally get yourself some cocoa, Rosso? A Politico poll this month found that Trump voters largely continue to back him, but men who self-identified as MAGA Republicans and voted for Trump in 2024 are deeply split by generation over their trust in the president and their view of the war, especially if the number of US casualties rises. Yeah, a lot of them don't want to get drafted. I think recently there was some word that they are raising the eligible age for being drafted to, what is it, 42 or 45? Which means that I myself could, being an American citizen, could still get drafted. Which might, in some ways, possibly be a better paycheck than anything I'm getting right now. But it sucks that you'd, if it were to happen, get deployed to a war zone. The political will, I don't think, exists to draft a lot of young men. Something like that would prove deeply unpopular, and you'd have, much like what we saw with the Vietnam War, a lot of people dodging the draft. A lot of people going up to Canada and other places to try and get away from being drafted. A lot of people gaming the system in whatever way possible to say, I've got XYZ disability, so can't draft me. A lot of conscientious objectors. Just don't think that would work all that well. And a lot of the insiders say that the military is better off as an all-volunteer force, that performance actually declines when you start having draftees being brought in. Historically, America has had draft lotteries. Don't want to be drafted, but if it's to serve my nation, I would be down. If it's to fight another nation's war, I'm not sure I would be down. Yeah, that's the trouble, isn't it? There's a lot of benefits that America can derive out of something like this, namely taking out an enemy that has been saber-rattling and ginning up terrorism both in the area and worldwide for a long time, causing a lot of problems for the Americans over the decades, and for everyone else for that matter. But they have especially been a thorn in the side of Israel. And that right now is the big perception, is that this is really a war that's being fought for the benefit of Israel. Even though the Americans are getting some sort of benefit out of all of this. The ones that benefit the most, Israel. And so on that I can understand not wanting to go off and fight in a foreign war for the benefit of another nation. Needs to be something that benefits the US. I mean, I know with draftees, you get the GI Bill benefits with something like that. So on an individual level, they take care of your schooling, take care of your healthcare. You serve long enough, you get a pension. depending on how much disability you can claim at the end of it, if you get hurt, they will take care of you. That is one thing, though. I was going to tweet out something about this, just some thoughts about it. I think it was a Caleb Hammer video I saw. Yeah, occasionally, you can see things on the horizon. You know, you war game things out in your head, and you sort of look, and you can kind of see, if you're paying attention enough, where certain things are going. On something that Caleb Hammer in particular keeps bringing up is that he's had a handful of military families and military veterans on his show to do a financial audit. And he's sort of taken notice, without being very blunt about it, of, gosh, I sure have had a lot of military veterans on my show that have claimed either near complete or total disability. And then there's that quiet part he doesn't say out loud of, you don't really look all that disabled to me. I think, chat, something to watch out for in the future, something to be on the lookout for, especially from leftists, will be some sort of claim that military veterans on disability are somehow the new welfare queens. This is going to be more of an American thing. Other countries, you know, comparisons may come up with them. But at least in the American dialogue, I think what we're seeing is the beginnings of some sort of new conversation, some sort of new meme, or whatever you want to call it, where the accusation is going to be leveled against military veterans that they are somehow the new welfare queens, that they're being leeches on the system of what are we paying all of these veterans all this disability for when they seem able-bodied to the rest of us, they say with a scowl on their face that they put on in bad faith. Because it's the closest thing that leftists will be able to... It's the closest little jab that they'll be able to get in against military servicemen and women without calling them baby killers like they used to back in the day with the Vietnam War protests. It's the closest line that they can skirt without out and out calling them baby killers. And you watch, chat, I think that we're not too far away from having people on the left, and maybe even some on the right, doing that, leveling some of those accusations against military veterans in America, of them being welfare queens. And probably even going so far to say that we need to cut military benefits. Whether it succeeds or not, I don't know. I should like to think that something like that won't gain a whole lot of traction, and the people doing it are just going to make themselves out to be arseholes. But I think something like that is on the horizon. I think you're going to start hitting people referring to veterans as welfare queens and as leeches on the system. And I don't think it's obviously an unfair accusation to level, it's a very dick move on the part of anyone. I just really don't know how much traction. It's just, I should like to think it won't go very far, but there's also enough people that are stupid enough to go along with it. And so it's something that's going to have to be dealt with. Let me get caught up on chat here. Several return deportation agreements have been made when it comes to American servicemen going AWOL or trying to escape military obligations or contract. Oh yes. Especially if you've got extradition treaties between certain countries. Yeah, if you're caught in that foreign country, they will send you back. In the last 20, 30 years, we've deported back to America a few American servicemen due to violations of military contractual obligations. Oh yes, it does exist. Damien Damore, welcome in. Greetings, gentlemen and studs. Hello, hello. Don't know how early it would be now as some of our neighbours. Then again, the Greenland issue is dropping from the media. Yeah, seems interesting how that's all just sort of been forgotten about. Compensation can reach just under 4,000 with just one person. $4,000 a month. For some people, that's an entire monthly salary. And then some. I love the I can't see any disability thing. Now, that's some next level stupidity. It really is. You know, I worked with military veterans in one of my previous jobs. They both still looked very strong and healthy. But they obviously, mentally wise, they were both suffering from PTSD. And especially in the building we were in, which was very cheaply constructed, not a whole lot of insulation, so when it rained or when a thunderstorm came through, it all just sort of echoed in there like a concert hall. And loud, sudden sounds like that. You have to be very careful with military veterans. No sudden moves, no sudden sounds or unpleasant surprises or anything like that. That sort of thing. One of them in particular, he would start trembling, and he would start shaking a bit. And he's like, I know it's just a storm, but it's bringing up a lot of unfriendly reminders. To which I and others offered whatever help we could, and just said, just let us know what you need, and much like the storm itself, it will pass. Because all disabilities are a missing leg. Yeah, no, there's sometimes the things that you can't see, and not just PTSD. There's one chap that he was that I worked with, military veteran. Can't remember. He was missing some pieces in his body, but you couldn't tell. We'll just leave it like that. I don't want to get too specific. But yeah, he was missing a few parts, but you wouldn't be able to tell by looking at him. Another one had some back issues. Sometimes he'd have to. Some days it would be so bad he'd have to spend a good half an hour just laying flat on his back on the floor there in the office and saying, if I don't do this, I'm going to be in agony. I can't remember if he had some circulation issues in his leg or something like that, or maybe he had an incident where some shrapnel hit him in the leg. But yeah, fully dressed in work gear, you would never be able to tell he had any sort of combat injuries or, long-term pain that he was dealing with. They hit it well. Needed that cocoa. Sounds delicious. I may have to get some later myself. I have encountered those people. Yeah. No, a lot of them are Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans. Served their time, and they And now they're in the workforce. Back to civilian life. Allowing Iran to have exponential ballistic missiles is a recipe for disaster beyond the nuclear armaments matter. This should have been dealt with decades ago. Nico, welcome in. Yes, it really should have, and I think at one point there were reports that Iran had enough material to assemble 11 nuclear weapons, enough to destroy the entire world a few times over. Quote the head of the Zeppelin bombing campaign of England during the Great War, Peter Strasser. Very necessary today, there is no such thing as a non-combatant. Modern warfare is total warfare. Very true. Now, they asked us to buy dry, storable canned food, noodles, ideally canned meats, and water for 3 days with some state agencies. And the state church, from what I heard during services, recommended 3 months of water in 2-litre bottles as they're cheap and in large quantities on most supermarkets. Yeah, get what you can while you can. Better to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it. War does horrors to the mind. They are shell-shocked indeed. Yeah, we used to... They call it post-traumatic stress disorder now. Used to, long ago, back at the time of our fathers, our grandfathers, and great-grandfathers even, they just call it being shell-shocked. I think they need to have benefits since they serve the country. Yeah, it's only fair. It's only fair. I find it a bit silly that so many veterans have to game the system, in a sense, in order to qualify for 100% disability, in order to receive a certain set amount every month. It's like, why? It's stupid and it's wrong, especially when you're dealing with veterans, to make them jump through so many hoops. You know, they've risked enough already. They've risked their lives for us. Give them the bloody payout. Just take care of them. Just do the right thing. At the same time, we still need to be careful since people abuse systems as well. Yes, of course they will. Even in the military, there will be bad actors who will try to abuse the system. Still, it's just the honourable, noble part of me just says they've sacrificed enough. Don't add insult to injury by making them jump through so many extra hoops and making it that much harder for them. We're advised to buy potassium pills, iodide pills, to make sure we have first aid kits and know where to find shelters and bunkers in our areas. With a website that tells you where the nearest one is to where you live are. Can't imagine having physical problems like that. Yeah, I can't imagine having to deal with that myself. Kind of puts any problems that we have in our daily lives in perspective. They've introduced the National Emergency Preparation Week in lead up to the National Air Raid Siren Test Day. We're warned to cover windows with tape and fabric and windowsills and ventilation with damp towels if anything were to happen. Sounds like the old-style Cold War preparations. Got a little bit of salted caramel added to it, just enough to have the hint. Ooh, nice. Telling us to stay indoors and wait till we were told it was safe to come outside if something was to happen. National Defense troops would go from block to block, house to house, into apartments supplying gas masks and biochemical and radioactive treatment kits. I imagine a lot of that is just holdovers from the Cold War, isn't it? Professional civilians crapping on vets seems like an education problem. Some people need a teaching moment in the proverbial parking lot. They really do. And I think if anyone starts leveling those accusations against veterans, I mean, bad enough you've got people like Frogan and Hassan Piker hoping that veterans get PTSD. Other people start leveling accusation of veterans being welfare queens. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that want to get them in a room alone and have themselves a nice little chat. remember all this being talked about in the news with officers brought on to work as experts in the class I attend, on the radio and in church. All this and more over Greenland. Last admin was an exercise in political theatre by a high school class. Handing around funds was treasonous. Yeah, they basically gave, I think it was either the Biden administration or the Obama administration, paid ransom money, effectively, handed the Iranians a lot of cash, and just said, yeah, please don't make WMDs, please don't make nuclear weapons, pretty please, here's some money. Rex, we got veterans on the streets of Britain and third worlders arriving this week getting put up in £30 million mansions. Welcome to Clown World, is all I can say with that. Homeless veterans is just unforgivable, absolutely abominable. Probably one of the few unforgivable sins of the Western world, allowing something like that to happen. There's so many charities set up that are in front of grocery stores and Walmarts, so it's obvious the kid is lacking for veterans. Yeah, always has been. As much as the system tries to put on a show that they care about and want to take care of veterans, they make them jump through so many hoops to get a certain amount paid out every month after they're discharged. And really, actions speak louder than words. So much care still lacking for veterans in the United States and in other countries. It shows where the priorities are. That it really shows that their attitude is that, okay, you've served your purpose, go away now. So many of them are homeless, yeah. It's a shame. It will forever be the shame of Western nations for allowing that to happen. It's that segment from the Pathways game. They can't even challenge that it's happening. Yeah, no, unless you get a visit by police for a non-crime hate incident. But it does need to be challenged. More people need to be standing up and challenging it. The key is to flood the zone. They can't go after everyone. They really can't. And if you overwhelm the system like that, it can paralyze them. And really, that's what needs to happen. More people just need to speak up. And refuse to shut up about it. Actually, that's the most entertaining thing about the Pathways game. Not one thing that Charlie got pissed about ever got debunked. It was simply, don't do or say anything about it or you might go to prison. A lot more people need to be risking prison. Saying something about it, doing something about it. Again, flood the zone. He's right. You're he in this case, Rex. Well, thank you, Kalergi. I try my best. Let's see. Contrast was striking even with the larger margins of error that come from a smaller sample size. More than 70% of those over 35 believe Trump has a plan, compared with 49% of those under 35. 66% majority of older MAGA men are willing to sacrifice American lives in order for the US to achieve its goals in Iran, compared with less than half of younger MAGA men who say the same. I mean, older MAGA men, 66%, that makes sense. they've probably aged out of the draft age range, so they don't care. But yeah, those who can still get drafted, they don't want to go. Younger men significantly less likely to say the war is aligned with MAGA principles and in the interest of the American people. Fair enough. Some of the most prominent MAGA voices are opposed to the Iran war, like Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, along with influential figures like Joe Rogan, who holds tremendous sway with young men. There's even growing consternation among younger, more right-wing White House staffers, said one person familiar with the dynamics who was granted anonymity to discuss them. They're very frustrated. They didn't love the war to start with. Since it began, the constantly contradictory messaging from the president himself is just brutal. Brutal for staff to deal with and making their life really hard. He puts his people in a really tough position, especially people who are public-facing. That's the thing with the president, though. With Trump, everything's negotiable. And so much of what he says, the constantly contradictory messaging, it's sort of open negotiations out in public. Keeping everybody off base until some sort of resolution is reached. But yes, can cause a significant amount of heartburn and indigestion with people, because one never really knows where he stands from one moment to the next. I remember that veteran on Remembrance Day last year on TV crying, yes, saying it wasn't worth it. All that long, hard fighting in the Second World War, and then decades on, watching everything he knows and loves about what makes Britain Britain just stripped away. And the once proper country that he lived in flooded with third worlders and foreigners. Everything he fought for is basically gone at this point. There's nothing left. And so it wasn't worth it. My heart breaks for him. They gave their lives for what? Country of today? No, I'm sorry. Sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now. Yeah, I believe that's what his exact words. And he's right. He would know better than anyone. 40 years of Iranian-supported terrorists killing Americans is okay as long as it's not them, I guess. Yeah, Iran has been a problem child for decades now. And it's time that the problem child was dealt with. That reminds me, we take even our freedom of speech for granted, that our Euro countries can get arrested for just saying something they deem as hateful online. Yeah, the UK has already made more arrests and inquiries and taken legal action in, what, less than a year compared to the entirety of the existence of the Soviet Union. I mean, that should really tell you something as far as how far gone they are. And people wonder why I have no interest in going back. Why would I? I wouldn't be able to talk about anything like this. I wouldn't be able to talk with you like this. Because I'd probably be arrested by the police. Or maybe even killed by them, because I probably would resist. And believe me, I would put up a fight. One wonders if the US faced a near-peer foe that demanded sacrifice on the level of World War II. Can the US accept the losses to win? I don't think a lot of people in the US have the stomach for that anymore. They didn't really have it around the time of the global war on terrorism. They have even less of a stomach for it now. At this point, it would take Iran, North Korea, China, Russia, someone like that, launching a nuclear weapon towards a major city in Europe or in America. To galvanize the public in favor of war. Which, mind you, I never put it past globalist elites to try and do some sort of false flag event like that. I never put it past them. They're not above doing something like that. That said, on more practical grounds, Iran, Russia, China, everyone, they know they do something like that, it's game over. That is, we're talking about a world-ending event and mutually assured destruction, which has served as an effective deterrent to anyone using nuclear weapons like that. I fought for the future that history has proven they did not get. The sacrifice was for an empire the future did not permit. I think your message got scrambled a bit there, Harold. Heartbreaking what's going on in England. It is. It is. It's not the country you or I remember anymore. Didn't spend 12 years in the army infantry to defend these gutless cowards are the ones who import foreign hordes to turn a nation into cesspits. No, that's not what you fought for. You fought for God and country. King and country, or queen and country, as the case may be. And as, you know, as the time stipulate. But fundamentally, you fought for your people. And right now, our people are being replaced because we are so hated by the ruling elites that they just want us dead. They want us dead and gone because they don't like having to listen to us. They don't like having to give us what we want. They want to live off the largesse, off the fat of the land, and they want the rest of us to suffer in managed decline. Because that's all they know how to do. Because so many of them lack any sense of courage or vision. When we could be so much more. We could have colonies on the moon and Mars, exploring the cosmos. We could have clean, functional cities. Low crime, high trust societies where shit just fucking works. But we don't have that in so many places. Because ruling elites have decided that they don't like the people they rule over too much. And they just want to genocide them all out of existence and replace them with foreigners who they're not going to be able to control as easily as they think, who are just going to end up replacing them with their own people, and then proceed in turn, once functioning beautiful societies, into the same third world shitholes that they came from. I actually saw a tweet about this. I think I have it in here somewhere. Yeah. From the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele. Block by block. It'll take a little while, but it'll turn out beautiful. Talk about a strong man of history leading his country out of the darkness and toward that which is clean and good and light. This is El Salvador today, chat. Just like, nope, not having that. Clean streets. Nope, not having that. Clean streets. No, we say, not having that. Clean fucking streets. No, not the favela. Clean streets. No, not that. That. Not that. That. Not that either. That. No. Yes. No. Si. Non. We. Ie. Hi. No. Much better. Sort of. You can have all of this in your country too. You just have to take the problem elements of society and just lock them up. And if the civil servants and the judges get in your way, jail them too. You can have clean, functioning, safe cities and communities once again. If you're willing to be mean to undesirable elements in your society and mercilessly, ruthlessly root them out of the public and put them in the box. I thank God there's pushback in Japan. Don't want it to turn into Japanistan. Don't want that country to be ruined. There's people trying. There's people trying. And depending on who you talk to, it seems as though Prime Minister Takaichi has gone back on her word with a lot of things, and it's absolutely incensed a lot of people in Japan. People need to understand there is such a thing as good cultures and bad cultures. What do you expect when you import a lot of people from third world countries? Yes. You invite the third world, you get the third world. Third world people, third world problems. Historically, when troops brought in from abroad are made to fight their own countrymen at home, they usually turn on their fellow soldiers and join the enemy. Yeah, it's not going to end very well. The whole great replacement of white people and Western societies is not going to end the way they think it will. They're creating a golem that will eventually devour its creator. It's happened so many times throughout history. Just look to Rome, and you'll see it never ends well. I'm not even fully white, I'm half Asian, don't care about the colour of your skin. You just need to bring good to the nation, not turn it into an awful country that you left. So often, the awful countries, not the ones with a population that is predominantly white or of the Oriental persuasion. In other words, there's a reason that they're oftentimes referred to as the brown hordes. I've not kept up with it. If she did, I'm very disappointed in her. Yeah, conflicting reports on that sort of thing. I haven't been keeping a close track on it myself. Been busy with stuff in the USA. Yeah, there's a lot going on in America. But encouraging signs in places like El Salvador, which honestly, if you had to relocate somewhere, do the whole passport bro thing, I'd say go to El Salvador. I mean, I'd rent a flat here. The way they've turned things around, nothing short of spectacular. This right here should be every major city in the West. And it can be. But it takes the political will to do it. To do the hard things. And to take anyone who opposes you and put them in the box. We'll eventually make it through this political article, I'm sure. What matters most to young people, including young men, is having a commander-in-chief who takes decisive action to eliminate threats and keep them safe, which is exactly what President Trump is doing with the ongoing successful Operation Epic Fury, said White House spokesman Davis Ingle. Part of CPAC's intent, a hallmark grassroots gathering that's been held for more than 50 years, is to hype up conservatives, a particularly important mission for party leaders in critical election years. If Republicans want to prevent Democrats from flipping the House this midterm cycle, they need to ensure they don't lose any gains they made with key parts of their coalition in 2024, namely young men. Former INC Chair Michael Whatley, running for Senate in North Carolina, says, "We need you. We need every conservative, every Republican, every patriot across this country to focus on two things: get out the vote and protect the ballot." Mercedes Schlapp, senior fellow for the CPAC Foundation, opened Thursday's session by pleading with conservatives to remain united. "We cannot divide from within," she cautioned attendees. But interviews with a dozen young men at CPAC revealed broad concern that Trump is imperiling the U.S. economy, which has seen spiking petrol and fuel prices caused by the war. One 30-year-old attendee who was granted anonymity to speak freely about party dynamics said a lot of the young generation feels there's just not a lot of hope for the economy. Again, going back to what we said, it's still the economy, stupid. On stage and in hallway conversations, older attendees celebrated Trump for ending what they called a 47-year conflict in Iran, marked by the death of the supreme leader. A panel featuring Iranian women speaking about human rights abuses was met with loud cheers from the audience. Scores of mostly older conservatives milled about wearing shirts with the image of exiled Iran Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, who is set to speak at the conference on Saturday. Today, in other words. "I believe President Trump's shock and awe is what they needed," said Lawrence Ligas, 63-year-old conservative Chicago activist who was pardoned by Trump for charges related to the January 6th insurrection. Young MAGA is causing this divide because they're concerned about being drafted. I mean, he's not wrong, and can you blame them for being concerned? It's like, bro, try not to be such a fucking boomer about things. Multiple speakers on stage, both directly and indirectly, roasted online influencers for their opposition to the war. Conservative political commentator Josh Hammer blasted Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly in particular as doomsayers. In his speech, former Florida GOP Representative Matt Gaetz told the audience that dissent and disagreement has to be allowed. Tucker Carlson isn't going anywhere. Gaetz, who resigned in 2024 after being briefly nominated by Trump for Attorney General, then warned about the risk of military occupation in Iran. Sounds like a lot of points of agreement shared between myself and the former congressman here. I mean, he's right. Tucker Carlson's not going anywhere. He's still going to be around even after this whole thing's resolved. But yeah, there's risk involved in any sort of long-term military occupation. And if we're smart, we'll get out before this risks becoming a forever war. It remains to be seen, though, if the American government will do the smart thing. A ground invasion of Iran will make our country poorer and less safe, he said. It would mean higher gas prices, higher food prices. Not sure if we would end up killing more terrorists than we would create. That was certainly a problem that we saw coming out of the Iraq War. Let's see, comments from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. When asked, how do you feel about the Iranian foreign minister accusing the US and Israel of genocide? Let's unmute our browser audio here.
The Iranian foreign minister, what he said at the UN Human Rights Commission, accusing the US and Israel of genocide, essentially.
The Iranian? Yes. Oh, okay. Well, he's an expert in genocide. They're experts in that because, you know, they sponsor terrorism all over the world. And they've killed thousands and thousands of people. Look at the Middle East. Look at the Middle East, guys. Every problem in the Middle East tracks back to Iran. Hezbollah, Iran. Shia militias that are destroying and threatening Iraq, Iran. Hamas, Iran. The Houthis, Iran. Assad when he was in Syria, Iran. Everywhere you turn, they're behind all of it. They are a destabilizing, dangerous, evil force that had to be dealt with. They have to be weakened.
I mean, he's not wrong. They provided either financial or material aid in some kind to a lot of worldwide terrorist movements. The Mughals, Persian empires, etc. all had this problem. The Ottomans frequently found Balkan armies turning on them when commanded back into the Balkans, which is why they changed their way of arranging armies in the empire so that no army was to fight enemies in lands near ones where they were recruited from. It's like the more powerful, beautiful portions of Spain without the summer crowds of German and Nordic tourists. Oh, you're talking about El Salvador? Yeah. No, it's a beautiful place. I think I should like to go there for a holiday sometime. And Argentina. I think I'd go to Argentina for the lovely weather, for all the sights, and stay for the beautiful women. I still want my Argentinian waifu. Thank you for the hydrate redeemed, Jess. Let's see. This from the Washington Post. In Israel, wartime reality doesn't match what you see on the internet. Both the liberal internationalist left and the isolationist right are being duped by online propaganda. From Jennifer Murtazashvili, professor at the School of Public and International Affairs at the University of Pittsburgh. She writes that something strange is in the air. I wake up every morning in Tel Aviv having survived another day. Sirens go off in the middle of the night. We go back to bed countless times. We wake to news that the Iron Dome intercepted the vast majority, 92% by official counts, of incoming rockets. I step onto my balcony and hear the never-ending construction. An Israeli economist I know says we're always building and rebuilding the Jewish state. I sip my coffee, get my kids to their remote school lessons, then open my email and direct messages to see what happened in the imagination of the United States the day before. I moved my husband and 4 kids to Israel in late January for a Fulbright fellowship, arriving weeks before the war began. Since then, I've become a most accidental correspondent, the person everyone back home texts when they cannot tell the difference between what is on their feed and the reality on the ground. Yes, El Salvador. Remember there being aid agencies coming door to door asking for donations to countries like El Salvador. It sounds like they don't need it anymore. I want my cute Asian gal waifu. No, I'm not joking. Neither am I. If I can't have an Argentinian, I'll take an Asian girl. Nothing wrong with that. Everyone deserves love. Indeed, indeed they do. We're living through the first alt war, a conflict in which the war fought online and the war fought in reality have diverged so completely they might as well be happening on different planets. I think she might be onto something here, chat. It's not that people lack information, it's more that they are constructing an entirely different alternate reality, one that confirms what they already believe. I think they call that confirmation bias. Most mornings my phone is full of panicked messages. A friend in Pittsburgh, a colleague in Central Asia, a relative in New York. They've all seen videos of intense missile barrages ravaging Tel Aviv. One video sent to me featured what were ostensibly Israelis marching in droves on foot across what appeared to be the Judean mountains, escaping the country as it collapsed behind them. The videos I've been sent are all fake. They're either generated by artificial intelligence or simply old footage from somewhere else. I know because I'm here. The first night of the war was the most frightening. A missile struck about a quarter of a mile from our apartment. The noise shook our building. One person was killed, a woman who did not reach a shelter in time. That tragic event lodged the importance of the shelters in the mind of my children like no lecture of mine ever could. But after that first night, my kids saw that life continued. In shelters across Tel Aviv, I found myself alongside Muslims, Jews, Christians, and recent arrivals. The furious debate consuming the American internet feels distant in these spaces. People are mostly tired but hopeful that a better future is on the horizon. What worries me more than the fake videos are the people who cannot fathom that this war is going well for the United States, for Israel, and maybe even for the long-suffering people of Iran. The strategic picture is more favorable than the online narrative suggests. Iranian options are narrowing to outcomes that all leave Israel better positioned than before. Whether that is regime change in Tehran, a negotiated arrangement under American pressure, or a ceasefire along the lines of the Houthi deal. No matter what, Israel wins. What about the Americans? What about the Iranians? Why can't they have a win too? Why does it all have to be all or nothing with Israel? Markets know this even when pundits refuse to acknowledge it. Colby Barder, a political analyst at the Holon Institute of Technology, pointed me to what he considers to be the most telling indicator. Israel's stock market surged when the fighting began and has remained near all-time highs. Markets don't lie, he told me. They can. Quite often, actually. They price in everything, and right now they're telling you Israel comes out of this stronger. I wouldn't be too sure about that. You would not know any of this from Washington. 2 weeks into the war, I watch otherwise reasonable analysts sprint to catastrophe. Former officials, think tank scholars, credentialed professionals who are supposed to know how to read a conflict. Within days, they had written the obituary, quagmire, overreach, disaster. And that narrative has continued unabated. They were rather quick to start calling it that, weren't they? Of course, a lot of these people, probably not big fans of the American president, and so they will do absolutely anything and everything to meme into existence a failure, even whether it is a victory. Oh, Jess, congratulations on the 5-stream watch streak. The liberal internationalist left and the isolationist right, two camps that have agreed on almost nothing for decades, have suddenly found themselves in lockstep, racing to declare the war a failure before it had barely begun. This is the new blob, not the old foreign policy establishment that the term originally described. I don't think that's what it was talking about. The blob is more like unaccountable bureaucracy. But a new amalgamation that has arrived at the same conclusion from opposite directions. Together, they are the most powerful engine of the alt-war. I asked Golan Shahar, a prominent clinical psychologist at Ben Gurion University and self-described liberal-turned-centrist, to help me understand why do otherwise intelligent people send me AI-generated videos and refuse to believe my first-hand account. They don't want this to work, he said. They want it to fail. I don't know, chat. I think Mr. Shahar might be onto something here. I think the professor here might be onto something. I think that's probably the simplest, most effective explanation here. They don't want this to work, and they want it to fail. Analysts in the US, he explained, cannot have it that Trump and Bibi are the ones defending the West. People send me these videos because they need me to confirm what they need to be true. And when the author can't do that, it's just ignored. And they keep going. Because they're not really interested in the objective truth. Are they? This is the defining feature of the alt war. It's not that people lack information. It's not that people lack information, but that the success of the war conflicts with their priors, and so they have constructed an alt...
genius is... It's almost frightening.
Indeed it is. It's not that people lack information, but that the success of the war conflicts with their priors, and so they have constructed an alternative war. One in which Tel Aviv is burning, Washington never heard of the Strait of Hormuz before last week, and the whole enterprise is doomed, because that's the only version they can psychologically accept. The new blob has found its common cause not in a policy position, but in a psychological need. That need is feeding an alternative reality, more vivid and viral than anything the enemy could produce. Meanwhile, in the real war, I step onto my balcony each morning. The construction crews are already at work. My kids log into school. Israel, bruised and tired, keeps building towards a better future for itself and the region. That's a bit short, isn't it? Isolationism will not bring peace nor security. Being surrounded by enemies is not wise. Europe must finally exorcise the ghost of World War II and the left's manipulations using it. All very fair and true points, Nico. Well said. Ah, Jess, thank you for the live redeem. I really need to raise the price of those. Udda. But this tracks with the sort of vibe that I've been able to suss out from things, from the actual facts on the ground, and based on, official numbers and everything that we've been told, tracks with the general impression that I have that, yeah, it's actually going fairly well. In fact, you could say that the US and Israel are winning, and that again, most of us is just we're in the mop-up phase. But so many people want to believe that everything's already lost, that it's already a quagmire, that it's an overreach, an unmitigated disaster. I mean, if it is such an unmitigated disaster, how is it that people are able to still get petrol or diesel for their cars? How is it that things are still flowing, albeit at a slower pace, to the Strait of Hormuz? I mean, yeah, if it drags on for too long, it's going to get bad. But a few weeks, even a few months of this, the world can take it. The world can withstand something like this. Meanwhile, we turn to a Bloomberg article that's been archived. Saudi pipeline that bypasses Hormuz hits 7 million barrel goal. This is a good thing. If so much of world trade has to flow through the Strait of Hormuz, that's a problem. That's a problem. And alternatives need to be developed so that the world is not so reliant on one tiny little strait to move things through. Let's see. Saudi Arabia's crucial east-west pipeline circumventing the Strait of Hormuz is pumping oil at full capacity of 7 million barrels a day, according to a person familiar with the matter. Saudi Arabia rolling out a contingency plan to boost exports through the pipeline to the Red Sea as the effective closure of the strait due to the Middle East conflict has choked off Gulf oil producers' main exit route. Flotillas of tankers have redirected to the port of Yanbu to collect the oil, providing an important lifeline for global supply. Crude exports via Yanbu have now reached 5 million barrels a day. The kingdom is also exporting about 700 to 900,000 barrels a day of oil products, according to a person familiar with the Saudi oil industry. Of the 7 million barrels that go through the pipeline, 2 million are destined for Saudi refineries. The Yanbu route is only partly offsetting the hit to supply from shutting Hormuz, through which about 15 million barrels a day of crude shipments passed before the war. But the bypass is one reason oil prices haven't reached crisis-level highs of previous supply shocks. Well, that's good. I mean, it's only half the capacity pre-war, but it's also keeping the prices down. With the Houthis now saying they're entering the war, concern for the oil market will be that the Red Sea becomes a new front. Still, the Houthis have not given any indication they would attack tankers going through the Red Sea and Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and at least for now, there's no sign of action in the area. And let's see. We saw comments earlier from Marco Rubio. This from Iran International. Rubio says Iran war may last 2 to 4 more weeks, but no ground troops needed. The Secretary of State telling G7 foreign ministers Friday the war will continue another 2 to 4 weeks. He told reporters the US can achieve its war objectives without any ground troops. He said, we're ahead of schedule on most of them, the objectives, and we can achieve them without any ground troops. And the objectives were destroying Iran's missile and drone capabilities and factories to produce those weapons, as well as its navy and its air force. Which, I mean, most of us who aren't even military experts, I certainly don't pretend to be any sort of military expert or armchair general about this sort of thing. It's like, yeah, you don't really need a ground force to pull that off in this day and age. You can do that with naval and air supremacy alone. Any sort of ground force you send in, it's a mop-up operation at that point. Let's see. Probably should be following this. Let's give Iran International English a follow. And we will also turn on notifications. This is becoming quite a critical source for what's going on in Iran, chat. I'd encourage all of you at IranINTL_EN or just search Iran International English. Good source for what's going on out there. Let's see, video shared with Iran International showing armed motorcyclists moving through the streets in Shiraz amid strikes. Turn the audio down here. Sounds like he fired a warning shot. Which, I mean, slow traffic like that, I'd probably be firing warning shots too. It's like, oi, move your asses. Pity I can't get away with that here. I'm sure a lot of you would feel the same way. It's like, there's a good reason for the Second Amendment. Fire off a couple of warning shots, get these idiots in traffic moving. Let's see. Exiled Prince Reva Pahlavi received a warm reception at the Conservative Political Action Conference. Attendees inside the venue and Iranian Americans gathered nearby showing support, according to videos shared on social media. Everyone happy to see him. Lots of handshaking, lots of talking. Everyone all smiles, including His Royal Highness. Let us hope for a quick and swift restoration of His Royal Highness to the throne. And as we say so often, long live the Shah, forever may he reign. Let's see. IRGC linked media says Iran is reviewing an exit from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. I mean, they've been looking for any excuse to get out of that anyway. Not that they were honoring it to begin with. Some institutions in the Islamic Republic, including Parliament, were urgently reviewing a potential withdrawal from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. According to the report, a consensus was forming there was no justification for Iran to remain in the treaty. They remain a signatory to the NPT, which aims to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons while allowing peaceful nuclear activity. There's never been anything peaceful about the nuclear activity. Never. Let's see. Right, so Marco Rubio's saying they can do what they need to do without the ground troops. Meanwhile, Wall Street Journal, being quoted by Iran International, saying the US may actually deploy up to 17,000 troops near Iran as the war enters the new phase. We should probably emphasize near Iran, not necessarily in Iran itself. The United States could soon position more than 17,000 ground troops in and around the Middle East in a major military escalation linked to the ongoing conflict with Iran, according to the Wall Street Journal. If approved by President Trump, the deployment would add around 10,000 additional soldiers to forces already active in the region, signaling a possible shift toward expanded ground operations against Iranian targets. The original tweet from Gladys Seligman. 17,000 ground troops on Iran's doorstep, far short of what would be needed for a full-scale invasion, but they could seize strategic territory on the mainland, secure Tehran's uranium stockpiles, or take an island. Which, I think that's what they've been wanting to do anyway. So, alright, but it's not necessarily troops on the ground in Iran. It's not troops marching on Tehran. So I guess that's something. Meanwhile, Russia sending upgraded drones used in the Ukraine war to Iran. Russia sending a shipment of drones to Iran, including upgraded versions of the drone technology Tehran originally supplied to Moscow after its invasion of Ukraine. Iran has been firing drone barrages at Israel, its Gulf neighbors, and US base across the Middle East for more than a month following the US and Israeli attack on the country. Iran has its own stocks of Shahed drones. Russia has made improvements to the design during the war in Ukraine, including adding better navigation capabilities. Russian and Iranian officials have had very active discussions this month regarding transferring drones from Russia to Iran. A US defense official said it's unclear if the shipment is a one-time delivery or part of a series. Neither official could say how significant the delivery is or how many drones were sent. Another European official said a small number of drones would not have a major impact on the outcome of the war. All officials spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive matters. And apparently Russia and Iran are still sharing intelligence. And speaking of Russia, from Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, This was a few days ago. March 26th, for the first time in close to a quarter century, 5 members of Congress, bipartisan, met with 5 members of the Russian Duma to discuss peace and bilateral relations. As representatives of the world's 2 greatest nuclear superpowers, we owe our citizens open dialogue, ideas, and open lines of communication. We continue to foster this dialogue and push for peace in support of the administration push for peace, as well as economic opportunity. Hopefully something comes out of it. Russian president not in attendance. Hard to tell who the Americans are and who are the Russians. And a lot of them really don't know how to pose for photographs. Let's see. Senate Majority Leader John Thune tweeted out on the 27th of March the following. Let us summarize where we are after a 40-day plus Democrat shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. 1. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Patrol are funded thanks to the working families' tax cuts and the foresight of President Trump and Republicans in Congress. 2. After holding DHS and the American people hostage for over 40 days, Dems got 0 restrictions that would prevent ICE and CBP agents from doing the job safely. 3. Due to Democrat obstruction of the appropriations process, ICE and CBP will get even more funding through budget reconciliation. 4. Dems have once again established themselves as the open borders defund the police party heading into an election. 5. Dem leadership has proven once again they can't be trusted to make a deal. Which begs the question, if you're a Democratic senator or one of their left-wing supporters, what was this really all about? Reminds me of the photographs of teachers and school staff hung up in the entrance to the school I went to as a kid. Yeah. A lot of people don't really know how to pose for photographs. Data Republican, really good account on X. Follow them if you haven't already. Replying, hello, Senator Thune. At 3 a.m. on Friday, the 27th of March, in a near-empty chamber, you passed a bill by voice vote that excludes all funding for ICE and CBP. Let me repeat that. Voice vote. No roll call. No record of who was there. No accountability. Just you, Barrasso, and a handful of senators shuffling paper in the dead of night while America slept. You could have demanded a recorded vote. You chose not to. You could have held the line for 5 more days until the House returned. You chose not to. You could have used the same procedural tools Democrats have used against you for 40 days. You chose not to. Instead, you gave Chuck Schumer exactly what he asked for, DHS funding minus immigration enforcement, and called it a win. Then you walked to the cameras and blamed the Democrats. Let's be precise about what you did. 1. You caved to a demand Democrats made on day 1 of this shutdown, 41 days of supposed hardball negotiation, and you settled for their opening offer. 2. You handed them a template. The next time Democrats wanted to fund any agency, ICE, CBP, anything else, they now know, just shut down DHS and wait. John Thune will fold at 3 a.m. 3. You punted to reconciliation. Good possibility, you said. Not we will, not guaranteed, just maybe. Meanwhile, ICE operates on fumes from last year's bill with no certainty of future funding. The precedent you set. You've argued for months that the filibuster is sacrosanct, that the 60-vote threshold protects minority rights, that we cannot bend Senate rules for policy wins. But at 3 a.m. on Friday, you bent every norm that actually mattered. Voice vote to avoid accountability, empty chamber to avoid debate, midnight deal to avoid scrutiny, and immediate recess to avoid questions. You will bend the rules to avoid a fight. You just won't bend them to win one. What you've actually accomplished, Democrats demand ICE restrictions. They got ICE defunded. Not reformed, not restrained, defunded. And you're out here tweeting about how the Democrats are the defund the police party while you just voted to defund border enforcement at 3 in the morning. The question you should answer, why did this deal have to happen at 3 a.m.? Why couldn't it happen at 3 p.m. with cameras rolling and every senator on record? You know why. Because you don't want your voters to see what surrender looks like. Here's my message. We saw it anyway. Stop hiding behind Democrat obstruction. You're the majority leader. You set the schedule. You control the floor. You chose this outcome. Own it. There are but two parties now, traitors and patriots. Quote from Ulysses S. Grant. Very well said by Data Republican. Not sure what that was. Let's see. White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff saying on Friday, United States hopeful there'll be meetings with Iran this week. We shall see. Oh, and then there's this. The Vice President, J.D. Vance, confirming Representative Ilhan Omar committed immigration fraud, saying, quote, Ilhan Omar definitely committed immigration fraud against the United States of America. VP says the White House is now going to go after Omar for these crimes. Quote, what are the legal remedies now that she's committed immigration fraud? How do you go after her? How do you investigate her? How do you actually build the case to actually get some justice for the American people? Vance also calling for a probe into Omar's knowledge of rampant Somali fraud in Minnesota. She's been at the center of a lot of the worst fraudsters in the Somali community. Let's watch this clip here.
About Ilhan Omar and Tim Walz.
Exactly.
And obviously, Ilhan Omar, the president and the White House have been out saying that she married her brother, that there is immigration fraud going on here. These are deportable denaturalization offenses. Can you give us an update on that?
Yeah, so we actually think that Ilhan Omar definitely committed immigration fraud against the United States of America. And I talked to Stephen
She
Miller
did.
about
There's
this.
really no question about it at this
Trying
point.
to look at what the remedies are. That's the thing that we're trying to figure out is what are the legal remedies now that we know that she's committed immigration fraud? How do you...
Well, it's really simple. You know where she works. You probably know where she lives. Just grab her. Send the FBI and have her arrested. Put her in jail. And she can wait there until you figure out what to do with her. And then absolutely railroad anyone who gets in your way until they finally denaturalize her and give the deportation order to send her back to the shithole she crawled out of. Yeah, it's easy. Deport her, yeah. In this man's words here, you can just do things.
You go after her? How do you investigate her? How do you actually do the thing? How do you build the case necessary to get some justice for the American people?
I'm not interested in building a case. I'm interested in just getting her out of the United States of America. Just get her out. Put her on a plane. Put her on a boat. And send her back to Somalia, where she belongs.
There's a related issue, Benny, which is she has been at the center of a lot of the worst fraudsters in the Somalian community. So do I know that Ilhan Omar was aware that the Quality Leering Center was defrauding the American people? I'm not certain of it, but we at least need to investigate it, because if people can commit wrongdoing without even the fear that they're going to be found out, that's a fundamental problem. So I'm worried about the immigration fraud. I'm also worried about what did Ilhan Omar know about what was happening in the Somali community And why was nobody looking into it until, frankly, Donald Trump came along?
Because they had too much to lose from a really lucrative racket. That's why. That's why. They had too much to lose. And it's about time we start breaking up those rackets. And putting people in jail over said rackets.